CoinFund Rabbithole is pleased to present Jacob Arluck and from Tezos. So many of you are likely familiar with Tezos. It is a decentralized blockchain that governs itself by establishing a true digital commonwealth. Tezos was built to facilitate formal verification, a technique which boosts the security of the most sensitive or financially weighted smart contracts by mathematically proving the correctness of the code governing transactions. Say that 5 times fast. Also, an innovative consensus protocol based on liquid proof of stake empowers all the users to contribute, secure, and to be rewarded. Jacob is focused on the Tezos ecosystem development and governance research. So yeah, take it away.
Basically, just to give a really brief overview of Tezos for those who don't know. Basically, it's the idea is that it's an upgradable platform for assets and applications. Sort of what we, more recently we've been sort of moving towards this sort of is about what Tezos is, away from sort of the long, wordy description that Devin was using. But basically, the idea is, at its core, what it is it's this network that uses this liquid proof of stake mechanism to allocate rights to govern the network as well as produce blocks on it by consensus. And then it has this multi-stage on-chain governance mechanism. The whole idea is that it reduces the iteration time. It makes it easier to coordinate around a preset protocol, etc. And I'll go through all of that. And then one of the coolest things is that it's a meta protocol. It's actually more. It's not just. It's sort of very agnostic about what it's running. The actual architecture is very agnostic about what it's running. It's basically a way to agree. It's that you not only agree on, say, what's happening on the blockchain, you agree on what the blockchain is or what software everyone's running. And so that's sort of, and I'll walk through all of that. So basically, what is Tezos in practice? Outside of the chain, it's basically supported by nearly 500 bakers. We call staking or validating, we call it baking. It's a French project. Basically, every continent in the world has bakers, validating the chain, securing the chain, and people are doing it in every form. So they're using AWS, they're using little ledger devices, they're doing the entire thing on Raspberry Pi, and all of that will get easier for reasons I'll mention later. And then there's about 110 of these delegates, which basically, there's 470 delegates, but there's 110 that are public that have sort of identifiable information on chain that you can basically, or off chain that you can basically use to delegate your rights to participate in the whole validation process and take part in this whole thing. And so about 71% of the total supply, at least as of last month, is involved in this process. So pretty much the whole network, if you account for the activation process from the Tezos fundraiser, that's pretty well known. It basically it's something more like 80% or 85% or something like that. So almost everyone is using Tezos for baking at the moment. And so then, what is this whole baking thing? It's basically this allocation of the right to produce a block, and basically, as you can sort of see by the graph, sort of have this. Initially, we had this sort of this is the bakers per day, basically unique bakers per day. And so basically, initially, you have this rapid increase as the network is launched, you have all these people, and then you still have this steady. I probably could have put a trend line, but basically, we've had this this continued sort of steady growth, and then sort of stabilization of this one big group of delegates and bakers. And what does liquid mean in this whole thing? It means that basically anyone can delegate. If you are holding Tez, you can basically send your rights to participate in this process to another user without actually sending them your Tez, and without basically being at risk of slashing if in the consensus algorithm basically it prevents people from sort of double baking and stealing, doing a double spend, as you talk about in Bitcoin, 51% after Bitcoin. And the idea is that it has delegation, but it's not DPoS like DPoS like in EOS or Tron or List or one of these kinds of chains. And the baking model, this whole baking thing is basically incentivized on inflation. We don't consider it yield or interest. It's not an investment product. It's actually basically a non-dilutive monetary policy. And basically, it targets this 5.5% inflation rate for the first year, but it's actually a fixed reward per block. And the coolest thing is that we can always change that, or the entire inflation model, from within the chain with the governance mechanism. And so some of the other brief details, and the reason I'm mentioning this now is just to talk about some of our more recent improvements and work that we're doing is basically basically the protocol randomly assigns people to to these to each block based on their role of Tez, which is about 8,000 Tez. It used to be 100 or 10,000 Tez. And the name of the consensus algorithm is EMI, and it's very similar to this is the original one. It's called EMI. It's named after Emmy Noether, which if you write it out, spells no ether. But basically, instead of longest chain like in Bitcoin, it's basically this fittest chain that is considered the longest chain in Bitcoin is the one with the most hash power. And this one's like sort of the fittest chain, which is the one that's the most endorsed, the chain with the most blocks. The most endorsements in total. And every block has basically 32 is endorsed by 32 other stakeholders. So that's how you add it up. And so basically, so the study uses bonds and slashing of people who make on multiple chains to basically make sure that nobody, sort of does 51% attack and basically steals funds, or can steal funds from other users. And a smart contract platform that becomes much more relevant because obviously you can, if there are peer-to-peer assets or other things other than just the cryptocurrency, you can also potentially steal those and do all sorts of bad things. And so then what it tells us also, is obviously a smart contract platform. And it's evolving significantly in that regard. So originally, it has this thing called Michelson. Basically, it was designed originally. Tezos was designed as reaction to Bitcoin actually, and basically they designed it with the idea of like short, simple contracts, don't take up that much space, and it's basically designed with formal methods in mind, which Devin mentioned in her intro. And they basically the team in Paris that that's created this protocol. They are they have something like 40 engineers. More than half of them are PhDs. Almost all the PhDs are people who did programming, language theory, and verification, and this kind of thing. And so they've created this library called Arluck. Basically allows you to use this proof assistant to to start verifying contracts. They're well on your way. They've already done a couple of multi-sigs. They're doing asset contracts. They're doing escrows. They're doing all this stuff, and all of this stuff. The idea behind the way that the smart contract philosophy of Tezos has always been, or at least originally, starting to, and I'll explain why we're kind of moving away from that now, is basically to we're keeping this part, which is basically embedding the most popular verified contracts into the core itself. And so you can initially that means like having it in the shell, and you can basically just easily deploy it. It's wrapped basically by instructions that you can use in the shell. And then later it could involve actual operations, that basically have a better gas accounting. And so then we're sort of moving away from that more recently. So we have basically outside the chain itself, we have people working on it's not just that the folks who work on the core sort of this programming language background. We also have folks who are doing a lot of people who are attracted initially to Tezos are people with programming language like acuity or background or interest. And so Lego and SmartPy are both being built, and there are multiple other projects as well, like Morley and Lorentz and this sort of thing with the Pascal. But these are the two that we expect to be sort of the most popular. Lego is going to be this multi-syntax generic language where you can basically that has a certified compiler to Michelson or whatever compilation partner we replace that with. And then you have SmartPy, which is basically allows you. This is actually a version of CryptoKitties written in SmartPy right here. That basically lets you write Tezos contracts in Python, basically. And in Lego, you can initially in Pascal, but you can read Python, JavaScript, XML, whatever you want. Once the syntax is supported. And if you want to try them out, you can go to legolane.org or smartpy.io. They both. Smartpy.io has an IDE that you can basically just start deploying contracts to mainnet, pretty quickly actually. They make it really easy. And then Lego is launching an IDE soon, and both of these will be in a stable release of their public versions pretty soon. But going back to this idea of like Tezos is this meta protocol, and what we mean by that is that in theory it can actually instantiate like any blockchain protocol. Pretty much like Tezos wanted, the stakeholders wanted to become Bitcoin. In theory, they can, turn Tezos into Bitcoin. And the reason it says theoretically is because, as I explained, like at the end of the day, these things are held together by a social model, a governance model of some whether it's formal or informal. But the point of pointing this out, the reason I point this out is that it's not just that there's like a model that a governance mechanism that people use to upgrade it. It's also actually built into the architecture of the system itself that it can be changed in modularly and continuously. And so this is the long-winded way of showing the amendment process or what it looks like. And basically, it's this four-stage process. And basically, where you in the first period folks propose changes to the protocol. They upvote as many as they'd like, and then in three subsequent rounds rather, they vote with a high this quorum that dynamically adjusts. And so there's a star there that initially started at 80%. And then followed by like a testing period where there's this little test fork that comes out and allows you to try out different operations, that you would want to basically ensure also would be valid on the test on the new protocol. And then in this final round you say, okay, based on the results of the testing period or how it did in an off-chain testnet, we think this should be what Tezos is. We're going to change it to a new protocol. And so this whole thing takes about 3 months. So as opposed to, you look at other networks where basically the average upgrade time, in Ethereum, the time between forks is, can be 1 to 1.5 to 3 years, 2 years rather. In Zcash, it's every year. Tezos, you can do it in as quickly as every 3 months. If there's that many, if there's upgrades that make sense to that effect. And so then we actually tried it out. We've done it live on a live network, and basically we did this. The first one was called Athens. We follow a naming convention now hopefully we have a sort of a decentralized naming convention that basically said, because the team that created Tezos is called Thematic Labs. They, basically they decided that they want there to be a decentralized naming convention that follows the structure of every upgrade or every version of Tezos, starting with a new lettered state. So, and the reason this is cool is that actually, and I'll show you later, is you can actually put it into the hash of the protocol. In every block of Tezos, there's basically a hash of the protocol that you run. And so this process, we actually did it live. We tried it out, and we just upgraded a couple of constants. So we basically, did this from the end of February to the end of May. We passed and activated it. We basically reduced the threshold you need to participate in proof of stake to 8,000 from 10,000. We doubled the gas limit, and we basically got pretty unprecedented turnout in terms of stake. So in the first round of vote, in the first yes/no vote that we had almost 87% of the stake turnout to vote, and then the second one, we had 84.35% of the stake. And so at the end of the day, this is mostly symbolic, right? So one of the things this also allows you to do is do continuous funding, or allows you to fund with invoice. And basically, in this one, we just did a symbolic invoice of 100 Tez. Basically, it was a round of beers for the team, because this whole thing was just about changing constants. But it really wasn't just about changing constants in the sense that, basically these bakers, it's in their interest potentially to not reduce the size of the role, the threshold they need to participate in the process. And it was a nice, early sign, of folks being willing to, participate in this positive some way and coordinate rather than, basically, sort of pull up the ladder behind them or not let other, you imagine like if the price changes, the price of baking, so the entry fee to baking changes. And so lowering it means that that just matters less. And so basically, this was a nice early sign. One of the things, it was one team that proposed it, Thematic Labs, as said the folks who created Tezos. But the thing that was really the really cool aspect of this thing, you basically have 200 bakers in 35 countries, every continent in the world, basically voting on new economic infrastructure, an upgrade to their economic infrastructure without a centralized third party. And that's really that part is really there are other networks like Decred and others that are doing this notion of on-chain formal governance, that sort of thing. But in terms of what the potential is and just the sheer scope of and the magnitude of the upgrade, doing it over 3 months, this whole ordeal is something that a lot of networks are about to start experimenting with and trying and whatnot. But it's definitely, this was the first, in our view, one of the most significant short trials of this kind of model. And basically, if you want to learn more, you can read either reflections or reflecting on Athens. You just Google that. You'll maybe put Tezos in there, so you don't get something about happy speakers. But yeah, there's a lot more there about what happened, why it's significant. But the idea is we want to go from just upgrading constants to this notion of constantly upgrading, just this continuous, endless, sort of what we call the open source bulldozer approach, where people don't understand why it's such a big deal initially, and then it sort of it sneaks up on the industry or the space by just continued iteration and improvement. And so the new one is called Babylon, or you can also call it maybe 5, actually it's maybe 5 HQ. But basically, we started using this vanity hash. Basically, you can just do a lot of hashing. Eventually, you can get to a vanity hash like this. And so we're going to start hopefully doing this for every proposal. But what's in it? So basically, what we're voting on now in our work is upgrading the consensus. So the whole thing I explained earlier is called ME. We're upgrading to ME+, and the idea is that with that one you get significantly fewer missed blocks, just better overall consensus safety. It adds, basically the way it does it, it adds delay. Actually I'll explain in a moment, but Michelson changes that basically make it more like a normal language, so away from that original model of this sort of just these small simple contracts that are made for like escrows and that sort of thing, and really making it something that is a really, really good compilation target for all these higher level languages. And then changing the actual governance process itself, so adding a cap and a floor and a proposal hurdle, and then the account model change as well, so it'll be really easy for your wallet to just start to add delegation into anything. So basically, ME+, as I said, it's the way it works very high level is that instead of it being every basically counting the total number of endorsements as for the fitness, to select the longest chain, it's saying, well, basically we're going to wait if we don't have a sufficient number. It uses this, has this algorithm, basically this preset profile of the past few blocks that it's following and saying well, if were there basically were there 16 endorsements in 2 blocks back, were there 24 in the previous block. And if not, it just waits for those endorsements to come in. So it gives it better security assumptions, and basically it'll lead to a lot greater consensus safety. Not that the current one isn't safe, but also it's like a formatting issue. But basically, the idea with the Michelson changes is that, as I said earlier, it makes it a really nice compilation target. So it's going to make it all the pain that people have sort of expressed. Or a lot of the pain that people have expressed about using Michelson initially, and so our initial projects is basically a lot of it will be removed in this proposal, which goes live in 7 weeks. But then we're also making some of these changes around the quorum. So this is quite interesting. So we observed a lot of we had some challenges in Athens where we realized we had set the quorum, initial quorum, just like the number of amount of state that you need to show up to pass anything. Really high at 80%. And we ended up having really good turnout. Right? So we had 87% in one of them, 84% in the other. And what basically happened, we realized well, wait, if people keep doing this, it's actually going to move the quorum higher so high that basically one stakeholder could just hold out and basically be able to sabotage a proposal. And so there's this notion also this is a diagram from Cryptium Labs. Which is basically, which actually I'll mention in a second, but basically they diagrammed out, the issues with this proposal model, the current core model, and they also implemented a proposal hurdle, which I'll get to why that's interesting for forwarding some interesting attacks later. But basically, this is, the idea is let's make it 70% cap. It's actually what I found really interesting about this result. And I think actually, Jake, you have some research on or you published in GitHub something a little bit to this effect of why this matters is basically that it's this weird paradox where actually lowering the quorum actually potentially gives you better notions of consensus in the governance mechanism, and that's really a really interesting and counterintuitive result we didn't see coming beforehand. So what's the big what's the big deal? So one thing is that in the first proposal I showed you, the first upgrade I showed you, there's just one team doing this, right? There's one team that proposes constant changes, whatever. In this one, there's 3 teams that actually participated in the amendment process. And so there's Cryptium Labs, who's one of the larger bakers in the network. They have folks who got one of the folks who's actually developing IBC for Cosmos as part of their team. and hopefully we'll bring that to Tezos as well. But basically, they're involved in a lot of this. And Marigold, who I mentioned is behind the legal language as well from before. They also contribute some changes. But the real significance of this is that this is like a really significant change to a live network. And if it goes through, you'll basically have Tezos will have upgraded more in 1.5 years than Ethereum has changed in all 5 years, in all the years of existence. And that's not to say that there's no trade-offs. There are real, Ethereum not changing in retrospect actually probably made it easier for lots of people to, enterprises or other companies to just integrate it and make it, ERC20, there's been a lot of path dependence there, but it's a successful product. A lot of people have adopted it. It's, it's used for all this crowdfunding and interesting things like that. But there's real downstream consequences to this proposal as well. It will be a real test of okay, you upgrade a protocol, and then there's all these people who have to face the challenges of that, and sort of it's like the unsexy reality of these changes, which is it's similar. And similar things will happen in Ethereum too, with whether it be a DAO statement or root to awesome or anything. Which is basically that in our case, it's like wallet makers, custodians, smart contract writers. All these people will have to change what they're doing, and if you're changing every 3 months, that can actually the whole idea of these mechanisms is create sort of stability and clarity and everything. You actually can end up with some of the opposite of that. So we're working really hard to make sure that sort of the downstream stakeholders are not disrupted or are minimally disrupted. But one of the cool things that also prepares us to add snarks into the base layer, and it makes it a lot easier for people to actually write really specific smart contracts. And then the other thing is on the medium term, which in Tezos is really a matter of months, is to propose this sampling circuit from Zcash, so taking ideas from other chains and just implementing them as features. Basically to add snarks, and we'll have some more details on when that's going to be injected pretty soon. And then the next thing is we're also going to be launching. I think Nomadic Clouds will be launching a public testnet for our Tezos version of Tendermint. And then we'll also have things like Marigold, which is a layer 2 sort of Plasma or Lightning or anything. It's basically a scaling solution on Tezos. And then Plebio, which is basically a 10x reduction in the context, which is basically that it'll basically bring it'll basically allow you to run Tezos in RAM, which is really cool. And then the state of off-chain coordination is something I think we've been looking at a lot. So basically, you sort of have these global fragmented conversations all around the world, multiple languages, multiple whether it's there's folks in Korea, China, Russia, who have because the proposals are described in English, there's especially the technical details, there's chapters there, so we're working on localization. But one of the things that's really interesting is, you look at where everything is taking place, and it's 8 or 9 different places people are getting information and talking about it, etc. And this is great in a way because it makes it a lot harder to attack socially, but it also makes it a lot harder to coordinate. And another thing is as many of you may have noticed if you're not familiar with Tezos, there's a lot of strange words that I use, like quorum and baking and roles. And so it's still kind of hard to onboard into this whole thing. And hopefully a lot of these things will stabilize also. So a lot of things that people talk about take for granted in ERC20 or something like this, it's abstracted away from the ERC process or whatever. A lot of these things hopefully will be abstracted away to the point where you can talk about baking, what exactly is, or roles or formula. But for most people, you probably you won't really need to know what these things are, hopefully. And the way we're doing that is actually designing a discussion forum that we're launching pretty soon. That basically, a discussion forum and governance platform that basically abstracts away a lot of these confusing things and makes it really easy to understand what's going on, basically where we are in the process, etc. And then we'll also have a discussion forum eventually around sort of self-sovereign identity that we use in the system as well. We have we're doing this in sort of 2 phases. The joke is Tezos is sort of continuous, but then also in stages. And so it's sort of in version 1 of this Agora thing, we're going to do this discussion forum, and then the process is just taking things and really just combining them in a nice, very easy to understand interface. And then in version 2, we're going to do things fancier things like on-chain signaling and self-sovereign identity in a DAO, or multiple DAOs, etc. We're sort of watching what happens, with things like 3box and Moloch DAO and all this kind of stuff, rather than jumping in because, these are some really, sort of groundbreaking experiments, and with whether it's identity or with, public good funding or not. And one of the advantages we have is that we don't really have, we basically have the benefit of waiting. And so I think you'll see that some of this stuff really actually launch in Q4 and beyond. But we're excited to we'll be presenting and releasing for really soon. Hopefully within the next week or two. But there's also this whole other side of Tezos, right? And I was getting to some of the challenges, but there's really just so much to this, right? So we're doing stuff that really hasn't been done before in terms of coordination, the scale, the types of stakeholders, the having to explain distributed systems to this many people, many of whom have no idea how distributed systems work, even if they're baking. These kinds of things are real challenges, and we're basically working really hard right now on things like localization, as you said, on things like as you started this discussion forum. But there's also some more sort of interesting attacks and things that have been happening in Tezos that I thought would be cool to mention as well. And so I don't know if anyone here has seen the movie version of Dune, which actually isn't very good. But basically, there's this character I always think of, this guy like Baron Harkonnen, and basically there's sort of been this proposal called Brest. This is the city of Brest in France. Basically, that was used to, as the name for a proposal by the folks at, I think Camel Pro. But there's sort of this, they sort of injected this proposal with the idea that it was probably going to get, the theory, at least one theory, maybe that it's not what happened, but then this type of attack is something that's worth potentially contemplating, which is that these systems have really high, sources of legitimacy. So the governance process and whether or hard fork-based governance in Ethereum, etc. There's this very powerful legitimacy that's granted by these processes. And in order to sort of justify your leaving the network or doing something that's outside of those rules, you need to basically get rejected by the existing system. And that's what I'm coining like this idea of a Harkonnen attack, because the thing that basically a lot of people have alleged that Camel Pro has done is basically this team, they injected a proposal knowing it would get voted down, to launch their own network, which is called Dune. And so basically, and actually we don't really know if that's the case, but the idea is these kinds of things are what will harden our governance process and get, you can think of them as things like, you look at Ethereum's history, you have things like the DAO and all sorts of other hacks, the big, ICO craze, all these things that really have hardened the Ethereum's community, Ethereum's governance, etc. And we're going through a lot of these trials and tribulations now. It's quite interesting to observe. But also, in short, which just like someone asked me earlier, is like, what's the point? It's just another smart contract platform. Why do we need it? But what I think I really want people to understand is that we're working. It's really trying to be this open source bulldozer that advances every 3 months, or even if it's every 4 months, even if it's every 5 months, it can advance and add new functionality. And just eventually, eventually surpass folks who are, sort of launching their network from this massive, advantage in terms of liquidity, network effects, developers, etc. And we're sort of taking this, sort of gradual, methodical, approach to basically, as you showed, we're making development a lot easier, without getting into all the weeds of the folks who are also building on Tezos and who we're working with, stuff we haven't announced yet. But this is, this upgrade path is sort of the thing that allows the network to understand, or at least try to understand, that there will be changes. They will hopefully add better functionality to the network, and just continue to make Tezos continuously improve, the underlying software that in a way that makes people not want to ever leave. So it's this notion of gradually accumulating network effects and not leaking them out later. Is sort of the basic idea. And so another thing is we're hiring. So TQ, you didn't get the chance to mention it, but we're basically a company, sometimes likeness to Consensus, but we're much more, much smaller, more agile, and sort of focused. And basically we're more around around adoption. We're doing all these governance projects I mentioned before. We work a lot with the folks in in Paris and other core dev teams as well. And we also do run the major Tezos events as well. As I mentioned, I think the main thing is we focus on sort of working with companies. We have a team of contract engineers now, and we're hiring designers. We're hiring front-end devs, smart contract engineers, and both product project managers and marketing folks. So if you know any of those people or are one of those people, let us know. We're really interested in hearing about it. And if you have any questions, just thanks for having me. CoinFund.
Awesome. Okay, so you had, in that last graph, you're kind of slow and steady wins the race. But what is the Tezos endgame? Is it going to be the go-to smart contract platform? Is it going to be interoperable with everything else? Where do you see that?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think I call us friendly maximalists, but I don't actually. I think it's ridiculous to if we were to argue for Tezos maximalism to a normal person today, it'd be you're crazy. And I don't think that's the way to make Tezos succeed by any definition. I think our take is that we want it to be what we want to do is be the best place to tokenize assets. I didn't really get into that, but everything we're doing here is basically in service of a focus on being the platform for assets, for asset tokenization. We're putting a very significant amount of focus and time and energy and resources into building out the tools, basically making it very easy to get started, tokenizing assets. It's a big focus on the institutional side. We're also you may have seen there's someone building, Uniswap on Tezos called Dexter. There's going to be a lot more from that, and also with trustless assets and things like that. But yeah, we're making a big focus on. We definitely want to be, sort of a major platform for assets, if not the biggest platform for assets eventually. We definitely want to. I don't think we believe in arbitrary computation on the base layer. I don't think anyone does, right? But I think our end game is that we want it to be a place where you can basically do all either manage rights, manage assets, manage funds, etc., and just continually get new functionality, and then that over time that generates network effect. And we're also understanding the fact that that's going to generate a lot of skepticism up front, but we also see the interest that people have in being okay, that's my platform, and I'm done, and I don't have to worry about it anymore, and all that kind of stuff. That kind of approach is how we're tackling it. It's we go to people and we say, okay, you have this asset, it's a rare piece of art, hypothetically, you're going to need that to be, cleared and settled on a platform for the next 30 years, or real estate, or whatever it is. And basically, that's where we have the most, where we're most excited about Tezos, is that these are things where people really want it to, need a platform that will be around for a long time. And the reason why that accumulates network effects is that if you have, start to get multiple people who believe that about the platform, you start to accumulate this notion of network effects. That would be very, creates the kinds of needs that hold Bitcoin, Ethereum, and other platforms together. So yeah, that's the basic idea. Yeah. All right.
Thanks, Jacob. I don't think I've ever experienced a more dense presentation of
Sorry.
smart contracts. No, congratulations to you.
I barely talk about smart contracts.
Yeah, I've never had such a dense download. Okay, so Smart Pi seems awesome because you can write a smart contract in Python.
Yeah.
I wonder if you take a breath and give a 15-second elevator pitch on how to convince an attorney or a CFO of a corporation to adopt smart contracts, because they don't write Python. And they know how to write contracts, and they execute, 1 million contracts a day. But how would you pitch in 15 seconds for a CFO or a general counsel in an average corporation to adopt smart contracts in their legal workflow?
Have you ever seen Open Law?
The website?
It's an application, right, that basically runs on Ethereum, and it lets you, basically automate contracts and types of compliance, or will eventually allow you to do this without the CFO or the whoever C-suite or non-technical person needing to write any contracts at all. So you can. The great thing is that we are actually can all. So the great thing that I think for web notions of Web3 or smart contract platforms, whatever is it, we can build on all of the technologies that have been used in Web 2.0 to build applications. So we can just take the smart contract, use them as a backend, or integrate them into a backend, and basically, everyone will experience them through a front end and through an application, right? So I think that's really how they'll just use it the way that you use Facebook, or that you use the way you use Outlook.
Sure, with respect, that's operational.
Yeah.
How do you convince a general counsel to adopt smart contracts?
Oh, you mean
Within
actually what's the
within
value for their
legal
business,
framework.
not like so it has nothing to do with the pipe.
I'm talking about adoption of smart contracts.
Yeah,
We
but
obviously
what's
want
the,
to
well, I think the real
encourage
question,
adoption.
I
And
think
for
the
that,
real
you've got to convince the attorneys.
yeah, so the real question you're asking, well, yeah, but in some ways, actually, it allows you to automate compliance, right? So it's maybe not that you're convincing the attorney, you're convincing a company that maybe this is a more efficient way to start a business. So imagine, so one thing I'm really excited for is the notion of Stripe Atlas, like if you know what that is, or LegalZoom, or whatever, on a block. Yeah, no, I know. That's one thing I'm really excited about, and Open Law is doing it as well, making it so that you can just, you can imagine one-click Delaware corporation, but you can apply that to all, like a very large number of legal contracts. Like there's probably some power law of legal contracts that most people are using. There's the thing that we don't have today is we don't have good notions of like split contracts, so things that are both programmatic and also have some level of human discretion. We don't yet have that well codified in code. There's people who are trying that. But there's a long way to go before we're anywhere there. And I think initially most of this stuff will be like people creating, decentralized like esports, teams and like being able to vote on like uniform colors in the game. Stuff like this. Like I think that will happen sooner than people adopt like major adoption in the legal sphere for a lot of other things. Similar to DeFi before major capital markets.
Actually, someone else, you have.
Yeah.
So question, if you were looking to be an asset-based platform, aren't you stress testing your game theory as assets grow? And separately, it seems like a great protocol to fork and let smaller projects kind of govern themselves. What are your thoughts on that?
Can you say the last question again?
It seems like if your governance platform works, it seems a great process to have forked and let smaller projects create their own governance.
I don't think that's how governance works, though. I think that governance is actually like the same. I think that you can apply the same logic to Bitcoin and Ethereum in a way, because you can just say, well, they were able to, get people to use Bitcoin and Ethereum, so you can just fork them, and if I, slightly modify Ethereum or slightly modify Bitcoin, people will use it. Like, it's the same thing. The reason why they're successful is because there's this meme, there's this shared belief, there's this overpowering network effect around these networks that has nothing. It has to do with accumulated experience and accumulated behaviors that are like sort of like that surround the technology. Have nothing are many layers above it. Not just like it's not just that like the amendment process is only as good as the people executing it, and it's just basically like a way to encourage good behavior. It's not and prevent bad behavior. It's not a way to like actually generate, like it's actually the practice of it that even gets you there. So it would take a long time to accumulate. It's like Singapore or Switzerland. How would you say like, oh yeah, I'm gonna start a global financial center from nothing, and I'm going to compete with Singapore and Switzerland tomorrow? Like you can't, right? So
It's more of a question on the small scale, right?
Yeah.
So if I have a softball team, right, everyone has our own rules and that the protocol would do certain things. So there just seems to be use cases where the generalist versus individual kind of like trade off.
Oh yeah, so
Yeah,
one okay, actually a better way to think about what I think where I would clarify what we're saying is things like one thing I really like is like things like Cosmos and Polkadot and stuff, where you basically can have the ability to have sovereign chains or to have chains that have shared security but like have some customizability or whatever. I think that's totally possible with Tezos, and people are exploring it.
Okay. It's in the mindset.
Yeah, no, we like so the idea is that for money, for a cryptocurrency, you want it to, for at least some period of time, at least the stage of cryptocurrency history that we're in, we are not at the stage where networks can stop evolving, like unless you're Bitcoin, can stop evolving, and at which I think we definitely are. Once we go to Tendermint, I think we'd be really interested in doing things like IBC and also like parachain, dApp chain type things.
And then back to the first part of the question real quick, sorry. game theory, about a lot of value
Oh, yeah.
in game theory?
Yeah, sure. So there's actually a guy in this building who's probably the best person in the world doing that for blockchains right now, and he is, we're really interested in potentially using his SDK to basically do the economic simulations of all these like whether DeFi or other types of protocols. With trusted assets though that aren't pure bear assets, we're not super worried about it because you can just like you can basically reissue it on the blockchain. So.
Thank you.
Just out of curiosity, who's the gentleman you were just
Tarun Shidra, he works out of that office, windowless office, but he has there's a really good podcast interview with Lauriston actually if you listen to it. He's doing simulations for Libra, Facebook Libra, all sorts of stuff, but we're good friends with him, so we're quite interested in it.
So my real
Yeah.
question was, can you give a preview of what assets we're going to see issued on?
Yeah. So we've already done, we're doing 2 public real estate ones.
That was just a little lead in. So
Oh.
give that explanation as to why somebody would choose Tezos over say
Yeah. I mentioned it earlier too. So yeah, absolutely. So the main thing. So we've done 2 major real estate tokenization projects. One is with other returns, the guys who did the who I think did the stuff in Aspen with the St. Regis. And they're doing a bunch of Thai real estate. And then you have this big investment bank in Brazil, BTG Pactual. They're doing real estate in Brazil as well, and you're also there's obviously this whole other pipeline of assets we're talking about. We haven't announced a lot of the other stuff that we have that we will be starting soon, but basically it's real estate, equities, artwork, things like that. There was an tokenized artwork project announced in Korea like earlier this week or last week as well. But you asked actually why. So the why is what I mentioned earlier, which is continuity and longevity. Right? And I think for these assets is that if you're picking a blockchain, you basically want if you're picking a public blockchain, you want to pick one that is going to be around in 5, 10, 20 years. The way that you can ensure that is by having something that gets a lot of people to believe that the chain will be around in 5, 10, 20 years. And the way you do that is by upgrading it, adding more functionality, having a clear way to govern it in the case of things like the DAO hack or some other bad outcome. And that's why almost every new chain that's coming out is going to have some method of upgradability. Even things that don't have sort of upgradability of the base protocol, like things like Cadena, also have are making a big focus on upgradability of smart contract. So everyone is going to move towards some level of we think some level of upgradability or something that will ensure longevity over time.
Let's do one more question.
Yeah, actually, 70%, I think 60 or 70 is baking.
Yeah.
What are the other 30 doing?
Just hanging out.
So what's the main?
I can tell you, some of them are probably on exchanges.
So that's a strange breakdown, right? Like that means that everyone.
Yeah, it's because it's a new network. If you were to look at Ethereum in 2016 or 2015, it would look pretty weird in terms of the use of funds. And even in 2017, right? Okay, people are putting money into ICOs. What are people using it for, right? And now, 4 or 5 years later, there's people doing. People expect every chain when it comes out to be better or as good as Ethereum is in every facet. And I think our take is there's many shortcuts we can take. There's also many areas where you just kind of have to wait for people to build applications and do this stuff.
Maybe one more.
Yeah.
Jake?
It's okay, you're good. I'll ask you. Well, my question was, 80% quorum seems dangerously high, accurate token distribution. Yeah, decentralized is enough, you can go to deadlock. So I was wondering what backstops Tezos.
Yeah, 2 things. So one is that we're hopefully changing to 70. Second thing is, and creating a range, so 30 at the bottom, 70 at the top, and also proposal quorum, which means allows you to avoid having to vote at all on something that gets no votes in the first period. But the main thing we have to get around it is an adjustment algorithm, which is basically I can show you. It's really simple. And I think Maybe in the new upgrade, we're also changing that to be based on average participation, but the original one is exponential moving average of past participation. And so it means that if you have 80% and then 60%, you go down to 76% in the next round. So it just it brings you down slowly.
Smart.
You know who made it.
Well, let's give another round of applause for a lot of thanks for folks who helped tonight. So first Jacob from Tezos, OX3 for co-sponsoring tonight's meetup, and then Distributed Global and Jeff for hosting us in this beautiful space that we've been at multiple times before. We always have a great time here. So yeah, we have some time to mix and mingle. I don't know how much food is left, but I think there should at least be a few beers left. So yeah, come meet Jake and myself. We're here to represent CoinFund, Tezos team, and the TQ team, and OX3 are still here. So thanks everyone.
Thank you.